cities and towns of upstate, which once bustled with manufacturing, mining, and farming. We all know from inspiration, history, and nature, we deserve a return to the success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor, who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
Hey guys, thank you so much for joining us here on Radio Free New York. I've got different thoughts, different ideals on what's going on. Is it okay? Is it bad? Is it a good thing? You know, everything. And I'm going to come right out of the gate saying that I think I have a slightly different perspective than a lot of people who are talking about this. And I don't believe it has anything to do with AOC or any of the other politicians in New York City.
Do tell.
I don't. I think that $3 billion wasn't enough.
For the incentives, you mean?
Yep. That's why I think it is. So my gut feeling, being a business owner in New York State, and being decently tied into understanding the regulations, and certainly not all of them, and understanding the business climate in New York State, I don't think Amazon cares at all about what, you know, AOC says or some of the New York City councilmen and stuff like that. I don't think they care at all. I think they realized $3 billion wasn't enough for them to be sustainable. So... do
you have a number that you think would have worked for them?
No, no, it's New York State. Probably not. Yeah. You know,
right?
But no, I think that I just don't buy it for a second that the issue was, well, people don't like us, so we're not going to go to New York State. No, I think it's the same issues that we saw when they were considering Rochester and Buffalo. You couldn't pay them enough to come. And I think maybe initial analysis is like, yeah, you know what? $3 billion, that's the right number. And I think Cuomo knows this. I think Cuomo knows this definitely. And I think they tried to renegotiate, and Cuomo wasn't able to renegotiate. And that's why he's so upset. So I think that I think it's like more of it's way better to say, oh, you didn't want us, so we didn't come. That's like a good PR thing.
There was a lot of opposition, though, right?
There was a lot of opposition, but I think
not logical opposition. Don't get me wrong. It was more rantings from the left about social justice.
My big thing is I don't like subsidies in general. Like, I think subsidies give unfair advantages. So me personally, I mean, I don't live down there, right? I'm not going to be positively impacted by the jobs down there, but my state taxes were going to contribute about 1.5 or 1.7 billion of that. So I personally opposed it because I'm paying for Amazon. I don't even see a benefit. You know, I don't know if there definitely was a big left proponent to it, but I don't think it was just left. I saw
the opposition, you mean?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. I saw a lot of conservatives that said, why are we paying for this? Why are we using government money? Hey, we've got a $2 billion gap. So I think the issue was actually spread across all ideological thinking. But I just don't buy it that because somebody opposed it, Amazon walked away from $3 billion. I just don't. I think that what happened was the numbers seemed right. And then they realized how deep they'd really be going long-term, sustainability-wise, if they chose to put a headquarters in New York State. And I'll give you guys a couple of good examples of things that people don't maybe think about when it comes to terms of like doing business in New York. So I'll give you two examples that I've come across. The first is how New York State unemployment works. So I'll give you guys an example. I had an employee who worked for me for less than 10 days. Less than 10 days. In that time period, we found out this person misrepresented their skill set. So we found out very quickly we talked with the person about it, and we said, sorry, you can't work here. You don't actually have these skills that you said you did. You misrepresented, this and that. We split ways. And it was good. Like, this person was like, yeah, like, clearly, it wasn't like a bad thing or anything, but we split ways. That was over a year ago. New York State unemployment notified me that we are now, starting last month, paying unemployment for this person.
Yeah, I know.
And he worked for us for less than 10 days.
I know. I've been through this too.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the first thing.
You can request a hearing, but it's a waste of time.
Yeah, no, it's really not worth it. The other thing is, because of that, now I might pay a higher unemployment and rate on all of the employees that work for me.
Sure, because it's insurance.
Yeah.
So your experience rating changes, and so your rate goes up.
Yep. So that's a small company with less than 10 employees. Imagine Amazon with 25,000 jobs that they're talking about.
Well, that's exactly right. And then the paid family leave.
Yep. New York State paid family leave, which is minimal, and technically I think the employees pay that or something.
Well, yeah, but the old saying, don't let your camel get his nose in the tent, because then you're going to have a camel in the tent.
Yes, exactly.
It's not a difficult thing now, but this precedent has been established.
Yep.
And as the costs go up, because government never estimates the costs of their various programs accurately, because otherwise nobody would approve them, it's going to go up.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's just, one example out of, just one small example. Another example, I think it was maybe a year ago, maybe a little longer than that. We actually received a lawsuit from New York State Department of Labor. At this time, I think we only had 6 employees. I mean, tiny company.
You got sued by the Department of Labor?
Well, not quite. So we had a suit brought against us through Department of Labor because one of our job postings that was posted on an online website said that background check was a condition of employment. Now, New York State apparently, I think in 2014, passed a law that says that's discrimination. So we had it in the wrong column. You can have a background check, but you can't say if you fail the background check, you can't have the job. Mm-hmm. So you can't say it's a requirement. You can say having the background check is a requirement, but you cannot say that it's like a condition of employment. So basically, the words were just kind of flipped around incorrectly to not be within compliance. So some person who lived more than 200 miles away from our place of business filed a complaint and a lawsuit against us, said that they had a criminal background and they would be disqualified from this job based on our job postings. This person never even applied for a job, didn't even live in the regional area to be able to get a job, and was clearly seeking a settlement to try to just make money off of us.
It's called a strike suit.
Yep. We spent 8 weeks fighting this. 8 weeks. Ultimately, we won, but that's just like another little thing of how New York State just makes it so hard. So I think Amazon was like, yeah, $3 billion, this could work. And they go, oh crap, wait, what's our risk for this unemployment insurance? What's that going to cost? Oh, that's not sustainable long term. Oh, all this other the Ban the Box initiative. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. That's an initiative that some of the cities in New York, I don't know that the whole state has adopted it, but I know Rochester has, I think New York City has, Buffalo.
So check the box. Have you ever been arrested? Is that what it is?
So there's that one. You can't ask about the person's criminal history, and there's another piece of either that or another piece of legislation where you can't request a resume anymore. Or no, you can't request a resume before meeting for the first interview. So you have to actually have an interview first before you can request a resume. And so that just introduces a huge amount of inefficiency because you can't ask if somebody's qualified until you've sat down with them at an interview. So these sort of things make it really, really hard to run a business in New York, make it really, really expensive. You look at our payroll taxes, our property taxes, all the lawsuits. And I think Amazon said this isn't sustainable. I think that they looked at and said, yeah, $3 billion, they'll get us through maybe the first 5 years, but then we're going to have to relocate. And I think the guys at Amazon are some of the smartest guys out there. I mean, we're talking brilliant, brilliant people. And I think they were like, oh, you know what? Yeah, this isn't a good idea. People are making a lot of noise, though. You know, the media is fighting us. AOC is fighting us. Some of these city council people are fighting us. We got some people on strike. You know what? That's our out. Why don't we just say that, yeah, we're not to say they're not good people, but we're good people. We really care about you. It's not about the money. It's about you. We'll go somewhere else.
Well, but you can't negate those concerns for Amazon. Those are valid objections and things that they should worry about. But then on the other hand, I would think that as they were doing a site search, they would have already been amply aware of the regulatory climate in the state. So
yeah, I think so, but I think I'm just a little more cynical than, you know, I believe that, you know, they were just like 300 or 3 billion is just not enough. So
could well be. Yeah. They're gone in any case.
Yeah, they're up, they're gone.
Meanwhile, Rochester's saying, "Can you look at us again?"
Yeah, it's never gonna happen. Never gonna happen. We're gonna take a break here. We'll be back on Radio Free New York.
We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. Great pizza, fresh and good. Simply the best in your neighborhood. Come in, we'll get to know you. Call you by name. We can bring it to you any time of the day. Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family. Mark's Pizzeria.
This is Dom Genova, owner of Genesee Valley Motors in Avon, your no-nonsense car dealer. Well, we're your no-nonsense truck dealer, too, selling Rams and Fords up to the mightiest that they make. And we have a shop with Master Techs, open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., 6 days a week, even Saturday, so you can get your truck serviced when it's not billing hours for you. You may not be used to that. Visit RochesterWorkTrucks.com. That's RochesterWorkTrucks.com.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
All right, guys, welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and we are broadcasting on 1040, 92.1 and 95.5.
Right.
We're also on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And those of you who are watching on the online platforms, you can probably see I've got my really cool Radio Free New York t-shirt. So if you're listening on the show online or on the radio waves, you can go to Amazon, search Radio Free NY if you guys want to buy a Radio Free New York hoodie or a t-shirt. Help support the show, help us keep going here. You know, because we're trying to give you all the information that we can possibly give you throughout the show. So I want to welcome people online too. So we've got a whole bunch of people kind of flowing in online. Today seems like a little more active than usual. Maybe the Amazon in the title caught people's attention. But Barbara, Nathan, Steve, Eric, David, Berno, and guy whose username is Master of Puppets have joined us online. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. And if you guys can't listen to the whole show, you can always go to YouTube later and watch it there. So we just wrapped up kind of talking about Amazon. I'm a little cynical. I don't believe that Amazon is just likes, you know, that they were just hurt by the controversy and walked away, or that, you know, they care about us. I think it was more about the money. I don't think the $3 billion was sustainable for them. I think that they realized as they were really digging down in, starting to, you know, they hired one of Cuomo's buddies to consult for the building. And I'm
very important to grease Cuomo.
Yeah. And I think maybe then they started seeing, oh, This is how New York works. Ooh,
come on, guys. You're Amazon. I mean, you're Jeff Bezos. No, that's, Bezos.
Yeah.
Bezos. You're smart. You know how this works. This is tribal politics. And what's the number one thing, the tool in your toolbox with tribal politics? The checkbook.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just think I think the $3 billion wasn't enough. I could be wrong. I've been wrong before, but that was my gut feeling on it as I was reading through. I kind of felt like, this is a little bit of a publicity stunt for them to just say, "Oh, we care about you." And although it's funny, they're like, "It's not us, it's you."
Yeah, but on the other side of the equation, we have the travesty of these economic development zones around colleges where you can have tax free for 5 years. All you have to do is relocate close to a college, but there's a lot more to it than that. And basically what it amounts to is if you're a crony of the governor, he approves your deal, and then you get the financial incentives. And almost nobody would qualify for that.
Yeah. Well, and that brings up a good point because New York has a very long history of this type of behavior. Think of Startup New York.
Oh, yeah.
Startup New York is a gleaming example. What did we pay? $76 million. And we created like 106 jobs because nobody could qualify for it. There's just no way. It was like if you were in the service industry, you had to guarantee in 6 months you'd create like 1,000 jobs.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. There are programs, once again, designed by people who've never been in business.
Yeah, it was just totally like unrealistic, and it cost the taxpayer millions and millions of dollars. And we got about 106 jobs, I think, out of it. I think later they changed the number. They're like, "No, we really got 1,000."
They couldn't. There's no way. There's no way to. It's like nailing Jello to the wall. You couldn't get any definite information out of them. Yeah. And then all the TV ads that were basically thinly disguised political ads for Cuomo.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Paid for by us.
Yep. And that's where the bulk of that 76 million came from is running those ads. And those ads didn't run just in New York. They ran nationwide. Which you could say, oh, I wonder if, that was the first him trickling into that presidential bid, trying to raise his name recognition across the United States through these Startup New York ads.
Thus creating, a laughingstock image for New York State nationally. Thanks very much.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. And you look at things like photonics, too. I mean, New York State can't nail down anything to bring any type of economic anything into the state because we're just too overregulated, too overtaxed. We had to literally bribe people to come into this state in the form of subsidies, and even then it doesn't work out. It's not enough, and really makes it difficult for people. So something that we're going to end up doing here in a little bit, we talked the last show about the Green New Deal, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more in this show coming up in a minute. But before that, I want to remind you guys, as we go through these next segments, that you guys can call into the show. So I'd love to have you guys call into the show. Phone number is 585-346-3000. Once again, that's 585-346-3000. Because I want to get some feedback from you guys. I'm going to read through something here in a minute with Bob about this kind of updated thing that I put together this morning. Somebody reached out to me and kind of said, "Hey, we heard you talking about the Green New Deal, and we kind of felt like maybe you're opposed to like helping the environment." And I'm definitely not opposed to helping the environment at all. And I kind of felt bad that that's what they got out of the show, because the idea was that the Green New Deal is not sustainable whatsoever. Not with the resources we have today, not with the funds that we have today. And like, especially like some of the stuff in the Green New Deal was like, we're going to rebuild every single, building in the United States. Well, if you rebuild every building, first off, where's the money coming for that? But second off, if you rebuild every building in the United States, you've increased your carbon footprint tremendously. I mean, if a carbon footprint is really, really important to you, bringing in all those diesel trucks to ship in new supplies, to rebuild every business, cutting down as many trees as you possibly can in the forest to meet the demand to rebuild all the buildings, all the chemicals and other stuff involved in creating insulation for these buildings, wire sleeve cuttings for, the electric in these buildings, like all of this other stuff, you're not being sustainable by doing that. You're not reducing your carbon footprint. Instead, you're making it huge. You're talking about taking all the building and all the growth that has happened in this country since its inception, 250 some years worth of buildings, and you want to rebuild them all in the span of, I think it was like 10 years or something like that. That's not sustainable. That's not environmentally friendly at all. And then actually somebody just from Facebook commented, not to mention all of the waste created by the old materials. So say we knock down all these buildings, say we create fresh, new, totally energy efficient buildings with this process. What do we do with all the old materials? We already have a huge recycling problem. So really, you would have to then look at, can you reuse anything from these old buildings? Can you find a way to be sustainable with the disposal of this other stuff? There's just too many questions. In a decade, to rebuild every building in the United States, that's not sustainable. If you want to talk about sustainability, why don't we talk about states that make it illegal for people to collect rainwater? Let's talk about states where it's illegal for you to have a food garden in your backyard. Like, those are things that people could do to be green, to be sustainable, to actually improve the environment, to minimize the footprint that they use. So, the Green New Deal, in my opinion, doesn't do anything to help the environment. All it does is sit there and talk about us as a country spending trillions and trillions, maybe quadrillions even, of taxpayer money that we don't even have to begin with, on this kind of idea that we could just build everything fresh and new and not destroy the planet in the process. I mean, if you want to talk about, destroying the planet, that might be a good way to start. I don't know. So,
has anybody actually read the Green New Deal out there, by the way? Because we have a copy of it here at the station. It's worth looking up. Get a copy. It was only 14 pages long, but it really reads like a fifth grader class project. Yeah, there's absolutely no substance there. It's all this pie in the sky stuff with all these scare statistics in it, and it's frankly ridiculous.
Yeah, there was a lot of scare tactic type stuff in there that as I was reading, I was like, I don't know that most of this is true, and the parts of it that are, I would need to see some really serious information to believe some of the things that they were saying and read through the sources. But, it kind of motivated me a little bit. I was looking and I was like, I don't think that this is actually something that would give positive impact to our country at all. As I was reading it, and I know you guys are like, yeah, well, of course not. It's goofy stuff. But no, I try to look at things really objectively, and I try to look at it in the sense of are there things in here that maybe make sense? And I actually saw a couple people post about it where they're like, no, the thing that people are missing in the Green New Deal is this could push nuclear energy forward in the United States and things like that. And I'm like,
they want to eliminate it.
Yeah, I'm like, I didn't read that anywhere in there. But you know what? I will read it again. I didn't have the chance to. But what I did is I started thinking about, what would make things better for the United States today? What types of things should government be considering? What should Congress be bringing to the American people to actually make things better? Whether it's economically, like they talk about in the Green New Deal, or for the environment, or one of the things that's a big part of the Green New Deal is the idea of jobs and good paying jobs. I mean, they mention that multiple times, and things like healthcare. And I wanted to look at that and go, yeah, how should Congress be addressing these issues? So what I did is I threw some stuff on paper, and we're going to go through that in the next segment. And this is a super rough draft that we're going to look at together. I gave Bob a copy, as I walked in the studio, and we're just going to go through it. And what I want from you guys is to actually tell me and call in, comment in, shoot me an email between shows. This is just the very beginning of a idea of what Congress should maybe do to make our country or to help guide our country in a better spot. So we're going to take a break here. We will be back in a moment. When we come back, we're going to look at my beginning response to the Green New Deal.
That and more on Radio Free New York. Up next.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester. FM 92.1 Rochester. FM 95.5 Spencerport. And WYSL1040.com everywhere.
At University Eye Specialists, I see many patients who suffer from dry, irritated, or itchy eyes. Sometimes these symptoms are often due to severe dry eye. Over-the-counter eye drops often help, but sometimes dry eye may require treatment with prescription medication. Dry eye is a very treatable medical condition that should be taken very seriously. The health of your eyes is very important to us. Please feel free to call any one of our local offices for an appointment.
In America, we are living longer, healthier lives. The longer we live, the more likely we are to develop eye conditions such as glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic eye disease. If you are over the age of 40, it's important to have a thorough eye examination in order to identify vision-threatening conditions at an early stage. At University Eye, we have the technology and experience to screen for and to treat glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. At University Eye, your vision is our mission.
Phone 1-800-724-0938.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
So now, if I understand this correctly, Andrew C. Hollister's response to the Green New Deal.
Yeah. So it's just, a very rough draft, and I hope you guys are going to help me with this. So the first thing that I want to say about the Green New Deal, we went through it, and it was fairly short. It was like 14 pages long. So I was like, you know what? Maybe we can edit this and make it work. So the first thing I want you to do, if you got a copy of the Green New Deal with you, take it and drop it in the trash because I found so little. I think I found like 2 lines in the Green New Deal that we could carry over. And just want to, I looked at it, I was like, we could carry these over, but even the intent that they had, like the words mean something different to them than they mean to us. The idea of non-competing things for us means like government shouldn't be picking winners and losers, but really what it meant for them in the Green New Deal was we should have socialism so companies can't, work against each other. And I don't support that at all. So first thing with the Green New Deal, take the original copy, drop it in the garbage can. The second thing I think we need to do is we need to change the name because Americans don't need a deal from their government. That's not how this is meant to work at all. We shouldn't be making deals with our government. No, the government has a very, very specific purpose. It's to protect our rights and to limit itself. Not to barter deals with us, not to negotiate with the people. No, the government's purpose, the federal government's purpose is to protect our rights. And that's really it. It's not meant to be this big conglomerate that it is, and to, drop these major regulations on us and control how markets work in society. It's just there to protect us from itself, really. So that's the first thing. I say we eliminate the name, the Green New Deal. I came up with the Freedom and Prosperity Act, which
has a nice ring to it.
Yeah, I like the sound of that, but I also know that is like a much more attractive name to conservatives than it is leftists or liberals. So we're going to have to come up with a name that sounds a little more, attractive to both sides, I think.
How about the Freedom, Prosperity, and Redistribution Act?
Yeah, there you go. Throw redistribution there. And then, somebody says, call it, we can figure it out, good luck deal.
Sounds like something at a Chinese restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. So here I've got, it's not a whopping 14 pages. It's 3 pages.
I had to start somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. So it doesn't have everything in here. And I tried to make it read similar to the Green Deal, which may not have been the best thing, but I tried to follow the formatting they did, because I figure if people are saying this is a good idea, and I totally disagree with them, but if they think that's a good idea, I want to put it in a way that they can read it too and maybe consider that it's not. So we'll just kind of go through it, and you guys tell me what you think. And Bob, I'd love to hear, your input so I can scribble on this, make some changes, and make it into something better that maybe we could actually give to our representatives and ask them to put it forward. So I'll just start with the first part. I put that fancy "be it resolved" in the front that they all had to have. It just starts, that is the duty of the federal government to create the Freedom and Prosperity Act to protect the rights of the people of the United States, and to recognize that the founding principles of our country are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And the government's role is to protect these rights, not impede them.
Absolutely.
And I just think that's important, because I feel like government, like state, local, and federal, have totally forgotten about that.
Oh no, they're not interested in that. They're interested in power.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so those people aren't going to like this, because you're going to find like a consistent ringing in here of, reducing that power on these guys. So I just kind of rolled out with, in terms of economic prosperity, Congress recognizes that it's the government's duty to protect the ability for jobs to be created, not for government itself to create these jobs. And I think that's like a really important distinction, because people always talk about government created jobs. How's the government going to create good paying jobs?
Government doesn't create any jobs.
It does not. No, it does not. So then it goes on, but instead to ensure that the regulations do not stifle growth, prosperity, or economic mobility. And then it goes on to ensure that the federal government will, and then we've got, these different bullet points here. And, feel free to jump in at any moment, Bob, and let me know if any of these jump out to you. Otherwise, I'll just kind of run down the list here.
Sure, go for it.
So immediately stop picking winners and losers via legislation and programs. No more of that. Stop it. Why is the government choosing, we're going to choose this corporation, we're going to do that, we've got all these lobbies and stuff? No, pull the plug. Get rid of that entirely. Then eliminate all laws and regulations that create an unfair playing field for corporations above their competitors. And we see this all the time. We've got a lobbyist who comes in, they make some type of licensing that they know the competition can't afford, some regulation. They do that, and then what happens is the competition gets stomped out. Very similar thing as the next piece, but this time for industry. So eliminate all laws and regulations that create an unfair playing field for competing industries. So we see government doing this a lot right now, pushing things like solar. Solar is a really good example. There's so many subsidies. There's so many competing regulations to try and make things harder. And don't get me wrong, I love the idea of solar. I've tried to price out solar for my house a few times, and right now it's not economically viable for me. But if I had to choose between a like coal and solar, I'm going to find a way to do solar. That's me personally. Other people are going to feel differently. But government shouldn't be making that choice for us. Government shouldn't be trying to leverage one industry above another to try and make that decision for us, to basically create disincentives and punishment and fees to direct how people buy things in the market. This next one's pretty simple. Eliminate all federal subsidies. That's it. No more federal subsidies. Just get rid of them.
I'd like to see this enacted on the state level too.
Yeah.
I mean, these are ideas that operate across geopolitical lines.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think if New York State followed even half this stuff, I think we'd be looking at a totally different state. Next one, eliminate all special taxes and programs that are industry specific. Each industry shouldn't have a special tax or a special program. No, fair treatment across the board. And just simple, fair treatment. Immediately cease, and this one actually, this one wasn't necessarily my idea. My wife and I were talking about things a little bit, and something she said actually really made me think about this, because she was talking about I forget what we were talking about something. She's like, yeah, well, it's just a problem when the government uses a study that was funded by the party. And by party, I don't mean political party, but whether it's a corporation or an organization.
A person or entity.
Yeah, person or entity that has interest in the results of the study. And I'm like, yeah, no, absolutely. So the next part is immediately cease the use of studies to create legislation that are financed either directly or indirectly by stakeholders in that prospective industry. So if we're going to make a regulation about the roads, we'll say, everybody likes picking on the roads, right? And how the roads are going to be salted during this next winter. We're not going to use a study created by the big salt industry, or something like that. They clearly have vested financial interest in creating that study and having the legislation change in favor to them. So it doesn't make sense for us to use a study like that could be biased. And people say, well, sometimes they pay for these things to be unbiased. It's like, yeah, how about we just
wait a minute.
not
pay to have it unbiased?
Yeah, that's
does that sound does that nonsensical or on its face?
I think so. I think it makes people feel good to say it. I think it makes them feel good to say it, but I don't think it actually happens. Next one, and this one, very few, even city council and county legislative, ironically, a lot of times their corporations have this, which is forcing a vote recusal from any member of Congress on a bill that has any type of conflict of interest with a donor that has donated to their campaign fund. So as it stands today, if you have a conflict of interest, out of the goodness of your heart, you should recuse yourself from voting, but it's not required. And some local legislative bodies actually have rules for that, but Congress doesn't. And it's definitely a problem for us. Abolish any regulation or practice that contributes to inflation, such as the federal minimum wage. And I'm sure that is going to make a lot of people angry and a lot of people happy. But I think that the federal minimum wage actually causes way more harm than good. Because
absolutely.
I think it drives inflation way beyond what needs to be. And I get and understand completely why people don't understand that. Because it's just kind of not really understanding how things are priced, not understanding the cost of business. And, it's different in different states too, because some states have just the federal minimum wage. Some states like New York also have a state minimum wage on top of that. So it is different state by state. I say let the states handle it, get the federal government out of it entirely.
And while the states are getting involved in it, they should not be involved in it.
Exactly.
So they should get completely out of it as well. Just let the free market decide.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I'm totally behind that. This one, people might not understand why this next one's so important, and maybe I'll dedicate a show to talking about it. But stop backing U.S. currency with anything other than gold or silver. I mean, that's what's driving a lot of inflation too. And not just that, that is one of the reasons that our inflation is out of control. We're actually backing our currency with like the U.S. labor force. And just like other weird,
they're promises,
and promises,
basically promissory notes.
And the other thing I think we're backing our currency with right now is just a lot of bullets. We've got the world's biggest army, and like, you know, nobody's gonna like mess around with us type thing. No, go back to gold and silver. They'll actually drive the value of the dollar.
Because it's pegged to something of genuine value. Yeah. Quinn, our morning guy here on our flagship station, has a 1902. I think it's a $20 gold piece.
Oh, okay.
And he said when this was issued in 1902, it would buy 4 really nice men's suits.
Wow.
And today, that gold piece would buy 4 really good nice men's suits.
Yep.
Because it has value, because it's made of gold.
Yeah. Well, there used to be was it the $20 bills? I forget from what time. They're really rare, but they actually say the value printed on them is silver.
Silver certificate.
Yeah, silver certificate.
And that was done away with, I think it was in 1971 when we went off all the precious metal standards and we allowed currency to, quote, float, unquote. I think that was Tricky Dick Nixon's idea. And he, by the way, was a progressive, even though he's a Republican.
Yeah. This next one's going to make a lot of my libertarian friends very happy. And that is ending the use of the Federal Reserve. Get rid of it. And then the final piece I think should make all of us happy, and that is not to pass any law or budget that adds a single penny to the national debt. So we're going to come back here in a moment, guys, on Radio Free New York, and we'll go through the rest of this in the next segment.
Thanks for listening to Radio Free New York on the WISL stations.
From Avon Feed and Supply, introducing Dry Shod waterproof footwear. Dry, comfortable feet, even on those warmer days. Avon Feed has a big selection of dry shod for men and women, offering fully flexible athletic shoe sizing for great fit and maneuverability. Its exclusive insulation breathes and keeps you warm without bulk, and you'll stay dry top to bottom with state-of-the-art waterproofing. While you're at Avon Feed, find everything for your pet, from feeding bowls to toys, leads, collars, beds, crates, and tie-outs. Avon Feed and Supply has what the big pet chain stores will never have. Tim Cole and his great knowledgeable staff. And if you think you'll save money at that pet superstore, well, think again. While you're at Avon Feed, don't forget the 2-legged pets with River Rat Thousand Island cheese in great flavors, including hard to find mean and nasty. Plus, once again, nut butters, Nunday mustards, and Rickles pickles. Open weekdays 9 to 6, Saturday 9 to 4. Avon Feed and Supply. West Main Street at the bottom of the hill, just west of the Circle.
You're listening to Radio Free New York
on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister. I'm here in studio with Bob Savage. And we're talking a little bit about the Green New Deal. And I kind of put together something else that I think is better.
An alternative.
Yeah, an alternative to the Green New Deal. I'm calling it the freedom.
The brown deal.
Yeah,
no, I'm just kidding.
Brown deal. Yeah. The red, white, and blue deal. The Freedom and Prosperity Act, because I don't believe that what the American people needs is a deal with their government. I believe what we need is for the government to realize where its place is, I guess.
That's a good thought. We don't. What, we deal with the government? What?
Yeah.
What is that about?
And we don't deal with terrorists anyways, right? We don't negotiate with terrorists.
I like that.
Yeah. So this is just about what I believe Congress should take, and this is a very rough draft. I hope you guys will help me make it better. What I think Congress should take and act to make government back to what it should be, and to really give people the opportunity to have the economic prosperity and have the individual freedoms that we were intended to. So I'm just going to roll right into the next thing, which is going to be about individual rights, which you would think their Bill of Rights covers already. But, clearly that seems to be in question on a daily basis. So it says, Congress recognizes that it is the sole purpose of the federal government to protect the individual rights of all citizens by Allowing communities to operate without government overreach. I don't think that's too much to ask for. Promoting justice and equality. I think I might have copy and pasted that piece right there. Promoting justice and equality from the New Green Deal. I think that little piece. By eliminating special taxes and fees that create a subclass in society. So I liken this to things like, if you want this special thing, you can have it. You just need to pay the special tax.
Right.
Where it really just makes it so that the rich people, and not even rich people, just people that maybe have more money.
People who are elites, people who are connected.
Yep. They get special treatment because they can afford these special taxes and fees. Get rid of the special taxes, get rid of the special fees, make it an even playing ground for all of us. Next one, recognizing the right of people to use their property as they deem fit, as long as it does not negatively impact the quality of those who live around them, including things like allowing people to grow gardens on their property and allowing them to collect rainwater.
Yeah, I would just end your sub C here. I would just say recognizing the right of people to use their property as they deem fit.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah.
No limiting language after that.
Yeah. Well, I wanted to put that in there to emphasize the fact that right now people in some states, and this is before drought conditions, right? There are literally places in the United States where
there's a rain tax.
Yeah, there's a rain tax. It's illegal to collect rainwater. You need a special permit to collect rainwater. In parts of California, you're not allowed to grow a garden in your yard, and by garden I mean food. You're not allowed to grow food on your own property. Who's writing this stuff? When did it become okay for government to tell you that you can't have these things on your own property? Now, I get it. If you're running a machine shop out of your garage at 5 o'clock in the morning and you're making a lot of really loud noises and you're waking up your neighbors at 5 o'clock in the morning, Well,
then they can sue you.
Yeah.
Because you're creating a nuisance.
Exactly.
But government doesn't get to get in and referee the thing.
And not just that, it's like a quality of life issue, right? You're impacting, you're now infringing on somebody's freedom to just peace and quiet, So that's one thing. But I think saying, no, you can't grow food in your backyard and you can't collect the water that rains from the sky. Government has no jurisdiction over the rain coming out of the sky.
Yeah. In Maryland they do, but
yeah.
That's another story.
Yep. So now we're going to move on to healthcare, which is Congress recognizes that the creation of healthcare regulation has caused more issues than it solved.
Amen.
To resolve this, no person will be required to buy health insurance or coverage they do not wish to buy. Pretty simple. Government shouldn't be forcing you to buy somebody's product. The sale of health insurance across state borders will not be restricted. Could you imagine what that would do for healthcare?
Yeah, Congress shall pass no law restricting the sale of health insurance or health-related products across state borders.
No. No federally elected official will be allowed to receive healthcare benefits as a part of their taxpayer-funded salary.
Good.
All federally elected officials will be required to purchase health insurance from the same marketplace at the same rates as everybody else with the money from their paychecks. I think once they start using the stuff that we do, they'll think, maybe this was a bad idea. Congress recognizes that corruption and crony capitalism exists within government and should be eliminated by enacting term limits on all federal elected positions to include all members of Congress. I've been pushing for term limits for a long time.
I would make that any federal official, bureaucrat, elected or otherwise.
Yeah, or appointed even, appointed positions.
Exactly. There should be a term limit on everybody in federal government.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. I went back to the wearing the donors on their sleeves. So I got two things on there. They're going to wear their donors on their sleeves like NASCAR drivers while voting on bills, and wear their donors on their sleeves like NASCAR drivers while addressing the public to promote legislation. So if you were, and everybody picks on big oil, so I'm going to pick on Big oil. I'll pick on big oil. You know, if you're voting on a big oil bill, you should have, and ExxonMobil's your big, donor. It should say ExxonMobil right all over your shirt as you're voting for that bill, so people know where the money has come from and where your interests lie. This one I think is really important for like every piece of what happens today, because I feel like Congress and federal government has really started trying to turn things into a reality TV show and some sort of like media circus. So immediately ceasing to stand on the shoulders of victims by parading them around on television and at events to push their political agenda. I think that's got to stop. I don't care if it's a school shooting. I don't care if it's an oil spill or anything else like that. We should not be doing that. We should not be using victims to push our political agenda, no matter how valid or moral it may seem. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. This is another one that I enjoy. Taxing all taxpayer-funded salaries at the same rates as any other citizen of the United States.
That's not the case now?
No, they have special tax rates when you're
Good Lord.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Some of the stuff people just haven't heard of, so it doesn't, we don't even know what to fight against because we don't know that it exists. Eliminating all special tax rates. This one I think will make impact long term, which is eliminate the use of the term government funded and replace it with taxpayer funded in all existing legislation, new legislation, and press correspondence. So if they write some snazzy little note about this cool new legislation that they're doing, they can't dress it up with government funded, change it to taxpayer funded, because that's what it actually is. And now we're down to the very last piece, which is Congress recognizes that the creation of the EPA was meant to address negative environmental impact, but instead it's created more harm than good. So to resolve this, we're going to get rid of Superfunds, which I don't know if we probably haven't covered what Superfunds are.
No, I don't think we have.
Yeah, maybe I'll cover Superfunds in the next show so you guys know why that's so important. The U.S. taxpayer will not be expected to cover the costs of cleanup on behalf of private industry. Businesses and their insurance companies that have toxic spills will be 100% responsible for the cost of the cleanup. And the regulation that restricts the type of technology that can be used for cleanup will be entirely eliminated. So I'll take like 2 quick seconds to explain the Superfund and why that's so important and the whole EPA thing. Essentially, the Superfund makes it so that, and EPA regulation makes it so when you do have a big oil spill or a big toxic, leak or something like that, the company responsible for that isn't actually responsible. They're like responsible for the first like million or something like that. And that's just a number as an example. It's probably more than that, which their insurance company pays anyways. The company doesn't pay it. And then the rest is supposed to be covered by the Superfund, which is a fund set aside that's empty. It hasn't been replenished in, I think, 20 years, which is why our spills haven't been cleaned up. And then to make it worse, the EPA regulations are so old that there's very specific regulations in law about what technology can be used to clean up these spills. And guess what? You can't find the technology anywhere. It's 20, 30 years old. So even if you wanted to, if you're like, we're going to be a good company, we're going to clean this up even though we don't have to, you couldn't anyways. It doesn't exist anymore. So like this sort of stuff, I think this is the step. This is kind of like the skeleton, of things that I think people can get behind on both sides.
Yeah, what you got to do is you got to start somewhere. Yeah. And I think this does. So you did this as a class project of yours?
Yeah.
First thing this morning?
First grade research project this morning.
No, it's good.
So I put that together. I wanted to share it with you guys.
A good start, as they would say on the left.
Yeah, absolutely. So the idea is just to get feedback from you guys. Let's see if we can make this into something that's actually viable.
Now, have you posted this online? Is it available?
No, not yet. The ink's still drying on the paper as we speak. So, I'll post it up on the probably on the Facebook page and also on the website. You guys can go there, download the PDF, and then email me suggestions, thoughts. I'm also like really terrible with grammar. That's something we'll talk about next time. Talk about education.
There's a little cleaning up here and there, but
yeah. Never know where the commas are meant to go, and which things are supposed to be hyphenated. So you guys can help me with that too.
Well, you're a millennial, so that can be forgiven.
Yeah, there you go. If it doesn't have autocomplete built into it, I struggle.
Autocomplete.
Yeah.
Give me a break.
Yeah. What's crazy is Google actually in their email service now has autocomplete. You start typing a sentence, it'll guess what the rest of the sentence is. You hit tab, it fills it in for you.
Oh, my phone gives me suggested responses.
Yeah. So this is similar, but now built into your email client. So it's interesting. They know too much. You sign off too much when you click OK on that privacy agreement there. So I would love to hear your guys' feedback on this. Please give it a read through. I'll post it online. Send me some comments. Send me some emails. Give me a text, a call, whatever.
What's your URL on your website?
Yep. So it's just AYR, stands for all your rights. .show. So AYR.show, punch it into Chrome, Firefox, Internet Explorer, your big blue E, Safari, whatever your browser of choice is. It'll be up later tonight, and you guys can check it out and let me know what you think. So thank you so much for joining us here on Radio Free New York. I will catch you guys on Monday at 1 p.m.